Which brings me up a few options that you guys could have to come join with us. We have a turkey burner clinic the day after Thanksgiving, and we're doing a winter camp in December with Kaylin Sheridan. So it really excited. If you want to train in that representative way to help develop your instincts, please join us there. But I think that's so important that we delineate, am I in a training space right now, or am I in a game space right now? And then that kind of allows us to narrow our focus onto what's important right now.
I have a question for you. What do you think about this too? And I'm not really super certain on a lot of high school environments, but if they have a goalkeeper session, okay, and it's a time to be in that training space of like, okay, I can kind of decipher between what was right or what was wrong, or what would I change, or how would I adjust it? And then they go in and they're playing small-sided, or maybe they have enough to play 11v11 at practice. Would you recommend staying in that like training headspace during the time where you enter with the team, or would you recommend maybe trying to practice shifting into your game headspace? I know you can't necessarily fully tap into it because there's just nothing quite like game day. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you want experience getting into that game headspace. And so I think using an 11v11 situation, or even small sided, is the perfect time to try that. And something that I think about even in my line of work right now is the night before, even if it was training, the night before, I think about and I envision myself doing whatever it is I want to try. So I know this is so silly, but when I was playing in TST this summer, I wish I could go back and play now, because I would feel so much more prepared as a player now than I was as an actual player. But the night before, when we had TST, I was thinking about envisioning myself taking a touch on my left foot and playing with my left foot, because I wanted to be brave and I wanted to try new things, and I wanted to have the ability to solve pressure in both ways. And so when that moment came the next day when we were in training, it just was like natural, because I had already seen myself do it, and I knew that that was something that I wanted to try and be brave with. And it just came because I had seen myself do it. I set my intention, but I still was in a game setting. My head was still organizing. I was still communicating. I was still continuing to scan, looking for where the space was. But there were also times in the game that I felt myself having to talk to myself. We're like, okay, stay focused on this, because if not, I would let my mind wander into places like, oh, well, what if I made a mistake? I would look embarrassed, right? But I had to intentionally bring my focus and shift my focus back to the present, which I heard you say earlier. Being in the present is communicating, organizing, scanning. And when I did that, I couldn't multitask in my head to catastrophize what could happen if I didn't pull it off on my left foot, you know? So I think that's really important sometimes, is like, you don't wait for the moment, you prepare for the moment. And then you wait for the moment, right? You've already prepared. In my head, I knew I wanted to try that. I also had been working on my left foot before TST, like in our training sessions and stuff. I prepared for the moment, and then I waited for the moment to occur. And I felt that my preparation prepared me to be my best. So long answer, yes, get into game mode. And there are certain times, obviously, when your coach is there, that you could be like, hey, I just need more information in that specific situation before I forget what happened. So obviously there's some give and take, but I want to be in the zone as much as possible.
Yeah, that's good. And you know what else it does for us? Segues us perfectly into point number 3, baby. Let's go.
Oh, this is my favorite thing. There are a little bit of things that make me happier than when I get a free coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin'. So when I've spent all my monies on coffee, eventually I get a free one, and I love it. I'm like, oh yes, I can't wait to use my free coffee on the boardwalk, because on the boardwalk they're like $8 instead of $4. But the point is to use your bravery reward points. So whenever I spend money, I get money back, right, in my coffee app. And the more you try and use your bravery, the more bravery you get to try to do bigger and more difficult tasks. So, for example, if you're brave in training and you try to take that touch onto your left foot, the more you do that, the more comfortable you feel. And the more you're like, oh my gosh, like that just employing that little bit of bravery made me feel so much comfortable and so much more confident. I wonder what else I could do. And so then you're like, wow, I was brave and it worked out. Or I was brave and I had to continue to try and hone my skills and put more effort toward that and be deliberate about working on my non-dominant foot. But eventually you get better at it. And then you're like, well, I used the bravery to do that. So like, what else could I do? I can say my dreams out loud of what they could be, or I could try to go after that school that everyone thinks is outside of my comfort zone, or I could spread eventually if I put enough of bravery into something new that's difficult and maybe that everyone doesn't understand. But the more you use that bravery, the more you get, and the more you get, the more you can try to do more difficult tasks that might seem out of the realm of possibility for you.
I got nothing to add to that. I think that's great. Like I said, I'm taking notes over here. I'm like, ooh, yeah, bravery reward points.
Yeah.
It's good.
I mean, who doesn't love a free coffee?
First and foremost, everyone loves a free coffee. Everyone loves anything that's free. You don't even need to want it. It's just free, so it's nice.
Correct.
But yeah, bravery is huge, and I think that anytime you're learning to do something new, the first time you try it, it's going to feel so terrifying, but just the fact, whether it pans out or not, just the fact that you had the courage to do it just banks those points. And I think that sometimes the feeling that you have in high school season can be really isolating as a goalkeeper, because a lot of times you don't have a goalkeeper coach, and it's not to knock the schools. It's just they probably don't have the funds to supply also a goalkeeper coach, or whatever the reason may be. But I think that a lot of times it can be a lonely position. So kind of finding those moments to invest in myself and finding those moments to be brave is going to be your biggest confidence builder, and continue to build that trust that we talked about with point number 1.
I also just want to take a second to recognize too, is like, I think doing this kind of work is way harder than going into the gym and working on your arm muscles, your leg muscles, your core, right? If you do that, you see a almost week to week improvement, right? Last week I did 4 reps of 5, and this week, wow, I increased my weight and I'm doing 4 reps of 6 or whatever. That feels good. And maybe you're like, wow, everyone is like, maybe recognizing how the strength and conditioning is changing my body, and that feels good, right? But if I said to you, Tori, would you rather have nice biceps, or would you rather have a stronger heart and a stronger mind to put to training? I think you would say stronger heart and stronger mind, right? However, no one can see that. Right. No one can see that work. Only you can see that work. And so it is the most important work, and no one is going to recognize that for you. You are the only person that is going to be able to recognize, wow, I am so proud of myself. That was so hard. That was something I worked on. And ultimately, that's how I would want to set myself up for success, right? I don't want to wait for other people to say, wow, Jill, you're really working hard. You looked good in that. I want to rely on myself to give myself that. Yeah, it feels good if you were like, hey, Jill, that was really brave that you did that. But like, I want to fuel my own self-worth, because that's reliable. I can bank on that. If I am putting in the work, I can also give myself the credit I deserve. It's like, wow, you are doing every single thing you can. You are being brave. You are being resilient. You are being strong. You are recovering really well from mistakes. And that's something that I think over time is more fulfilling than waiting for other people to tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the hard work. And the funny thing about it is, like, when people want to get stronger, they know I got to go in the gym. But when people want to get, mentally stronger, or just like change something in terms of like their self-talk or mentality, I think it's twofold. 1, the work is scary. Mm-hmm. And 2, they don't know what to do. Like, I go into the gym to get stronger. Might not know all the exercises, but I can probably look it up. It's a lot harder to be like, okay, I need to be, nicer to myself and figure out my self-talk during training so that I can be present and get the most out of it. It's a lot harder to look that up and know what to do. So I think that it's just being intentional about it, and maybe even finding someone who can help you with that side of it.
For sure. And just a plug that Chris is going to be doing Bulletproof again, which is a 4-week course. It's an hour long for 4 weeks in November and December. It's incredible. And Chris is the best resource that we have at TKI, because I think the mental side is the most important aspect of goalkeeping. And all of you guys listening, you've been there, you've been alone before, you feel like you've let down other people, you feel like you've let down yourself. And having some tools to be able to manage pressure and mistakes, I think, is probably one of the most important aspects of what we do. Absolutely. All right, it's that time. Question of the day. I got a simple one for you.
Oh, good.
Favorite color Gatorade?
Oh, the light blue Glacier Freeze.
Yeah.
How about you?
It's a tie. I like the dark blue or lemon lime. OG lemon lime. As a kid, I always had a red mustache, though. I was into fruit punch. Yeah, and to me now, that's just, but it's disgusting.
The fruit punch does hit, though. Like I can't tell you that I don't grab it sometimes.
I guess if it was the only one. Yeah. But purple should just be eliminated from life.
I see, there we disagree. I like that light purple.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, I really like it. But they have a cucumber one now, and I think that can go.
That's true. I agree. That belongs in the spa.
I still like the idea of it, which is not right. It's not right to feel that
way. That's for the spa.
That is for the spa. Little cucumber over my eyes and in my glass of water.
Exactly.
All right. Are you ready for my question?
I am.
All right. Who from TKI do you pick for your 3v3 team? Like, we're playing 3v3 because, well...
With no goalkeepers?
You have to pick our staff members.
Oh, can it be a player from TKI too?
Has she worked at camp?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. You have to take Kaylin Sheridan off the table.
Fair.
Okay.
Super fair.
Because if not, then that would be both our answers and it would be boring.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more.
Welcome back to another... Oh, man, I messed up already. See? Welcome back to another Keeper Institute podcast. It's just me, your host, Jill Loyden. Tori is not here today, but I am joined by the wonderful Maddie Prohaska, who is a goalkeeper at Auburn. But Maddie, I am so excited to have you on the podcast because I think there's a lot of people who are in a similar boat as you on this journey of learning and growing and developing. And I think after this week, you did something that was surprising to you maybe, or impressed you, but definitely impressed me. So I think that journey is one that a lot of people are going to be on, and your insight is going to be really helpful for those goalkeepers. So can you give us a little background on who you are and how you landed with us at TKI?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First off, I'm really excited to just talk a little bit about soccer. But yeah, after my first senior year, thankfully COVID gives us a couple, but after my first senior year, after the SEC tournament in November, Jill actually thankfully called my head coach and just kind of, obviously, you know, Jill, she is really active in the SEC soccer and college soccer in general. So she kind of saw potential in me. I think maybe I didn't always see in myself, and just put her hand out and was awesome and gave me an opportunity to come up in December of 2023 just to see where I kind of laid against some professionals or people going into the professional landscape. And man, it was humbling to say the least, only to realize that I needed a whole summer at TKI. And this past summer spent 8 weeks, a little over 8 weeks, kind of learning, coaching, and just honestly, more than anything, growing as a person, which kind of I think has developed me as a goalkeeper more than I would have expected. But yeah, that's kind of what the last 8-9 months have looked like with TKI.
Yeah. So I've been having the pleasure of watching you play for the last few years since your little baby freshman year. And I actually called a game your freshman year when I saw you come off your line and I mean, it eventually ended in a red card. However, I was like, man, this girl's got some bravery in her, and she's obviously confident in herself. And throughout your career, I've watched you grow and watched you develop into a really talented goalkeeper. And last year I heard that you were maybe contemplating going pro, and I reached out to your head coach and I was like, hey, do you want my unsolicited opinion? And she was like, yeah. So I had a conversation with you and I was like, hey, just come, like, kind of see where you fall in line. Like, I think we can help you. I really think you have a lot of potential, that you're a great goalkeeper, but I think we can help you. Because, like, in my experience, it is so difficult for a young goalkeeper to transition to the NWSL and immediately play games, right? So sometimes that extra year of college is really helpful, because then you get an extra 20, 25 games, right? Yeah. And you ended up coming here, and I loved working with you. It was so brave, and you were so open and so willing. And I was like, okay, I invited you to be like, apply for the internship. Like, meanwhile, I'm like, Maria, if she applies, then she's getting it. And thank God you decided to, because it was such an incredible experience being able to work with you this summer for 8 weeks and do life with you. And I think more than any other intern we've had has, like, truly challenged me, asked so many questions, both in training, outside of training, about coaching. And you could just see your hunger to learn and grow. And in the beginning, though, it wasn't always easy, right? Because we have different methods. We train a little bit different than the traditional goalkeeper training. And our methods are a little bit more progressive. And it's difficult in the beginning. And in the beginning of your internship, you could see a little of the frustration that you endured. So in the beginning of your internship, and even maybe beforehand, what was your apprehension or maybe hesitancy to train this way or to play this way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I came in with an awareness that it was going to be hard, which I don't think helped me at all, because I still was, like, struggling, which is just so wild how even if you're prepared for a challenge, or even if your mindset is like, this is going to be exactly everything I've never done before, it still is going to challenge you in ways you haven't experienced before. And I think the biggest apprehension is coming from not even just my college environment, but growing up always being going through the cones and catching the ball. Obviously, that's a 101 of how to catch the ball, quotes. And you can learn to catch in that environment. But what is so different about TKI and what I never expected is how the ability to do hard things, or things you haven't been able to do before in a hard environment. There isn't a breaking down, let's catch the ball, and then let's learn to dive and catch the ball, and then let's learn how to do it with people in front of you. It's let's put people in front of you and challenge you from the beginning and learn from those experiences that are real and live, and let's grow from there. Instead of breaking it all the way down to the very bottom and building back up, it's kind of a good trial by fire. And I think the most important part about having trial by fire is having an environment where you feel safe, and an environment where people are going to support you. And I think from the apprehension side is doing hard things is scary. And what I learned throughout the first couple weeks, though, is that the people around you are going to make it less scary. It's not you getting the skill that makes it less scary. It's the people that are supporting you and challenging you and loving you and making you feel safe to fail is more so where you're going to grow, and when you're going to learn more about yourself and kind of where you kind of are in that position.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think it required of you? Because I think our environment, like you said, is different and it's supportive. But what did it require of you? Like, what did you intentionally bring to training with you every day?
I think the biggest thing was having, like, a sense of grace with myself. And I think in no way am I perfect at that. And a lot of times I'll reflect back after session and be like, man, I wish I would have, and I wish I would have done this, like, technically or tactically. But I think the biggest way I can grow is how I treat myself throughout a session. I think learning a new skill is really hard, or being in an environment that's new is really hard, but being able to have grace with yourself in that transition process is going to be the most important thing. And I think that's what I learned throughout the beginnings, because I think the beginning I came in with the mindset that I wanted to be patient with myself and have this sense of grace and peace and just walk away and know that I did my best. But as a high level goalkeeper, that's not always easy because you're like, I want to like be the best too. I don't want to just do my best. So I think after a couple of weeks, it was kind of learning how to walk away from a session and be like, yeah, that was a hard session, but I never gave up on myself. I put myself in positions to push myself and I failed, but I also learned through that failure instead of putting myself down through that failure.
What do you think it required of you outside of the lines? Because I think you're right. Like, it does take a lot of mental resilience to train in that capacity, because you're making so many mistakes, you're making errors, you're comparing. Well, you don't have to compare yourself to others, but it's very easy to do that, right? So like before training or after training or on days off or whatever, rest days, any day, like how do you feel like you prepared to succeed in that environment when you weren't here?
I think having a sense of self-awareness is really important in understanding what you need to be successful. And I've always been someone that, and I'm not proud of it, but comparison has just always been something I've struggled with, and especially in an environment with some of the best goalkeepers in the country, it kind of goes on full blast where you're like, man, comparison for 8 weeks is not going to survive. So I think being able to kind of take a step back, and I think the biggest thing for me was learning what my strengths are and where my weaknesses are and allowing them to coexist, but in a positive mindset. I think weaknesses and strengths can be talked simultaneously, and just because it's a strength doesn't mean it can't be like put on top and continue to work on. And just because it's weakness doesn't mean you have to do it 24/7. It's not going to necessarily progress it as much. And I think being able to find confidence in what you're good at and be able to share that with other people. And then at the same time, like for me, spread was kind of my big thing over the summer that I was learning, and diving into conversations with people that were really good at it or more experienced with it and getting to learn from them through conversation was really important to me, because I had the opportunity to share my knowledge on something else, which gave me confidence to be able to be vulnerable in moments where I wasn't as strong.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so good. I wish more people heard that and applied that to their everyday life. Is like, one, have those conversations with people, ask questions, talk about whatever it is that you're kind of inquisitive about, or you want to learn and grow, and like not just rely on someone telling you what to do all the time, right? Like, being able to have conversations with Cam or Katie or AB or even some of the other interns alongside of you is so helpful, because you can kind of work out in your head, like, oh, that's when that works. That's when that doesn't work. Here's where I can apply that because that's my strength. And that's when Katie can apply it because that's her strength, right? And hopefully, not only for you as a player, but that helps you as a coach then, because that you have that aspiration, understand a little bit more about the game and how each person can kind of interpret it different. So what happens when you go back into an environment that's outside of TKI? How did your experience here, both as a person and as a player, relate back to a different environment?
Yeah, I think something that no matter how aware you are of it, change is extremely hard, and it can come in so many forms. I think my transition up to TKI the first couple of weeks, it's a new environment and it's new goalkeeping, it's new soccer, it's new people. And I think simultaneously it's the same on the way back. And you think you're going back to what's comfortable or what you knew, that it should be easy, or that's at least what I thought. But you're a new person also, and you're a new goalkeeper, and every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And everything I grew over the summer and at TKI and up in New Jersey was a new version of me coming back to what I was comfortable with, making me uncomfortable, which was a challenge the first couple of weeks. And I think it wasn't just everything soccer, but it was getting back adjusted to what my role looks like on this team. And being here 4 years, you're like, oh, your role's the exact same, but you're coming in with new knowledge, with new people, and wanting to make an impact in a different way than maybe you've made before, adding a different factor. So I think the biggest thing when I came back and my transition away from TKI was kind of reevaluating what I wanted and what I truly wanted to leave as my mark in this season and the people I wanted to impact. I think I took a lot of pride in how I wanted to leave the program, especially going into my last year. And I've taken this big appreciation over the summer of how little playing can give you when you have the opportunity to learn and grow and coach and expand the game and be in intellectual conversations and be creative. And that's the kind of impact I want to leave on the players around me, which obviously is going to help your playing. But when all you're focused on is outcomes and did I perform good enough, or did I make this save, or did I get this award? It's like, those are just going to drain out eventually. And what happens when you don't get an award for 5 weeks? What, you're just going to like shrug your shoulders and be like, oh, I trained 8 weeks for what? Mm-hmm. And that kind of mindset is really what I was trying to figure out those first couple of weeks. Is I knew that's not the direction I wanted to head, but I didn't necessarily know which direction I wanted to go with the impact and the conversations I wanted to have with the people around me. And so I think that's the biggest thing with the transition away from such a open, safe, creative space, is how to bring that into an environment that's already established without changing the integrity of it, because you can't expect it to change. It's been longstanding. You've been part of it. Just because you're different, it doesn't mean it's going to be different. So balancing that and finding my piece of where I can make an impact. And I think that came in with the people. I have had conversations with our backs about ways that we can scan better or be in pockets to support each other so that we can build, and how allowing pressure to come with us to us is actually more beneficial than just letting them hold a low line. And so seeing them make connections has brought me more joy than like anything that I've gotten to like perform. And I think that is more longstanding and kind of the direction that you can take your mindset to make it more enjoyable throughout a really hard 4 months of college soccer, honestly.
Wow, that's really good. And then I want you to be as open and vulnerable as you can be on this next couple questions, but you have aspirations to play pro. And this is your last year. That's it. There's no extra plus 1 year. This is it. You have 20 some games left, 30 games left if you're lucky. How is the pressure of performing in your last college season? It's kind of like, your whole career has amounted to this season, right? And you have aspirations to play pro. How are you managing that external pressure?
Yeah, I actually really don't feel pressure that often. I feel like, and like, I don't really get nervous ever for games. I have so much confidence in the way that I prepare and the person that I am off the field and the relationships that I've made with my back line or like whoever's on the field, that I know no matter what happens, it's not going to really change anything. And I've also go in and I'm in the facility like 8 hours a day. I'm like, if I go out on that field and I'm like, man, this week I did everything humanly possible to put me in a place to be successful today. I'm not saying I'm not going to walk off the field sometimes like pissed or mad that something happened, but the next day I can wake up and be like, like I did what I could. Like I am putting myself every day in a position to be as successful as possible. I think also I love the game of soccer for so much more than what I do with it. I think performing in front of people is so awesome, and I get a lot of like confidence and excitement from that. But I find so much joy in being able to help the people around me understand the game better, that nothing that I really do is going to on the field and my performance is not really going to affect the way I can impact them. So I kind of like don't really feel that kind of need or pressure to be perfect or perform at such a level, because at the end of the day, it's going to fall the way it's supposed to fall. And if even I get the opportunity to work with one team at the end of the season, my hard work, my dedication, and just like the person I am, I know will kind of go further than the highlight reel they're going to see if they want to draft me.
Yeah. I'm going to clip that and I'm going to play that on repeat for myself when I'm feeling anxious and stressed and get some performance anxiety, because I think that's really good insight and really good feedback. Is like, no matter what your performance is, that you can trust your process, that you've done every single thing you can to prepare you for that moment. And also what I heard you say is like, it's not going to impact my relationships with people, because those are really important to me. And one mistake or something isn't going to change the way that people care about me. It's not going to change who I am as a person. It's not going to change the way I show up for my teammates either, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about your process to learn spread, because your process to learn spread, someone might not need to learn that spread right now, right? But they might need to learn touch into space. They might need to learn solving pressure. They might need to learn diving 2-to-1, right? Everybody has a thing that they want to improve on. So can you talk to us from like day one of this is something that I'm going to learn to implementing it in a big game against a top 5 opponent in the country against Clemson last week. And if you guys haven't seen it, go on our Instagram from Tuesday, August 20th. There's a video of Maddie performing her first spread in a game. Yeah, tell us your process.
A process honestly started with a bunch of why do people do that? What is the importance? It's stupid. You can't control the ball. Like a lot of negative thoughts around it, in all honesty. Like, why do I need to know how to do it? I feel like that's where every great success story starts, is a lot of hate. Maybe. But I went up and at TKI in December, we broke that down. Like, I talk about breaking it down to the like bare minimum. And it was still, I don't think I even completed a true spread that December, but it gave me an opportunity to kind of open the door, and I at least got in the shape throughout all my spring, and I would like at least sit in it, trying to kind of get some flexibility with it. And then our 5th-year goalkeeper, who had a little bit of experience with it, was amazing in taking me out on off days when I asked her to, or just get extra sessions just to keep experimenting with it. And it was really basic, step around a person or a cone and go into the shape, and not much to do with the decision making, more just the shape and the positioning. And then I got full throttle thrown into it first day of TKI, and it was, that first week was tough, and I honestly am really grateful that I was around people that were so experienced with it, because while it was a mental block and a mental challenge to be the person that struggled with it the most, it also gave me such determination to get better at it, where I was like, I want what they have. Like, I want that skill in my toolbox so badly. And I think there's something to be said for seeing it over and over and over again in different situations, and being able to talk critically with people that know it so well. And while I maybe wasn't that person, I got to see it happen so often that it was like, eventually, I don't even know what happened on July 4th, but I had this crazy, I remember the day. I had a couple throughout throughout June, but nothing really, it was really broken down. But this day, July 4th, with Tori at this session, I went manic, I guess. And I passed the beep that morning, and I was like on high, and I full thrown, just put my no thoughts, just went into it. And it was in that moment, it was 5 weeks of up and downs, both athletically, but also mentally, because obviously sometimes you can have a block with it. It kind of all came together, and to say every day's been good since then, that would be a lie. I mean, coming that next 5 or 4 weeks after that, there were still times that I would struggle with it. And there's such a difference between a long range 1v1 and a spread inside the 6 off a scramble. And it's trying to learn the difference between directional and immediate. And it's you get so hungry to learn, and you're man, I did it once, give it to me all. And then something happens, and you're oh man, I don't know actually how to directional spread yet. That was immediate spread. And it's such a humbling circle of learning and growing. And just, I can't even express the other day I texted Jill, and I was after I spread in the game, I literally shed a tear. I got up, and I was a tear came out of my eye, because it was in that moment, the save was awesome, so cool, we won and all of that, but I was so emotional after the game, because to work so hard for something and be so think about how insecure I was about it just a couple months ago, and to see how much I've grown and be able to do it in a game was one of those feelings where it was, I would say, the best moment of my career, just from a skill development and the person I'd become and grown so much through it. It really was a full circle moment for me.
You're going to make me cry. I am. Oh, man. I'm so proud of you. It wasn't even about the spread. It wasn't even about doing it and being successful. It was about the seeing you be brave enough to try something that you struggled so hard. And work through, and it was like so sticky and it was so hard at times. And, just seeing it emerge on its own, like in an instinctual way, the way that you came out low, aggressive, got right into it. Like was it like a full circle moment? And I'm just so proud. Yeah. I mean, you did it at the IGCC, and I like remember everyone be like, oh crap, she did it. What? Maddie spread. Like everyone went wild, right? Like, and I just think that example to me was such an illustration of what you're capable of. And also, like, hopefully for you, like, your main takeaway isn't necessarily about the spread. It's like, wow, I really can do anything that I want with this, like, sport in this game. Like, I can learn anything. I can grow in any capacity. I really, like, it's unlimited what I can still learn and still be curious about, and still how I can improve and develop my game, even though you're one of the best goalkeepers in the country.
I think that's when people get burnt out, is they don't realize the capabilities that not even themselves, but the game has to offer. Like that's a whole new skill that after 21 years of 18 years of playing soccer that I finally learned. And I think it's just, there's always more if you're willing to ask questions. And I think that was I was someone that was so stubborn against learning something new, but it's mostly because the fear of failure, or it's scary, or things like that. And it's not something you're comfortable with. But I think I feel like that was the first time in my life where I let failure be something that I dove into, and I really learned how to fail and not be the best at something, and really grow and learn and be really vulnerable in an environment, in a space where I felt safe to grow and be vulnerable. And that's why burnout is so sad, because I think it has a lot to do with the inability to know what they're capable of, or what the ceiling has to offer from just the sports standpoint. So
yeah, well said. I was just talking to someone about that the other day, how coming to training really is the one, well, not just training, but just playing goalkeeper is the greatest act of vulnerability, because you have to show up every single day not knowing what could happen. You could be the GOAT, or you could also be, the reason why your team lost if you make a mistake, but also just showing up every day and being in this specific environment where you're not asked to be 10 out of 10 all the time. We expect everyone to fail when they come to training. And so it's a complete act of strength and also vulnerability to show up every single week and ask for help and ask for assistance and say, hey, I'm really struggling with something, and I'm willing to try it in front of my peers and in front of you, even though I don't fully feel like I've mastered it. But I think that's something that we don't give ourselves enough credit for. Anyway, we can talk about that another day. All right. Last thing I have to ask you is what is your greatest piece of advice for a young goalkeeper?
Well, there's a lot that come to mind, but I think the biggest one is, it's funny, you talked a lot about growth and curiosity, or we've talked a lot about it throughout this podcast. And those are two things that I value so much. I ask a million trillion questions probably, and I probably sometimes over ask questions, and sometimes when they're the wrong times. But I think asking questions and being willing to hear answers that you haven't heard before and asking more questions based on them. I think people will tell you to not ask questions, and people will tell you to just stop talking and do what you're told. And I think that's the moment that your growth takes a turn for the worst, unfortunately. I think the more questions you ask, the more opportunity you have to grow and learn. And that's really where you're going to find your passion for whatever it is. If it doesn't end up being goalkeeping, then whatever you love, ask questions and be curious. And the more you get to grow and learn, the more passionate you're going to be able to become with whatever you love. And I think finding that and finding that voice is very courageous, because there's so many coaches and mentors that will literally tell you to stop talking and do what I say. And you lose creativity, you lose who you are in that process, and you lose your love. And I think finding that confidence to ask those questions will, at the end of the day, make you stay in love with the sport and in love with the position.
That's good advice. Maddie, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, what you're currently having struggles with, how you've overcome those struggles. Anybody who's interested in watching Maddie can check in on ESPN Plus. You have games every Thursday, every Sunday, SEC play. I have Maddie's games, which she didn't even know yet. I have your game against Tennessee. Unfortunately, it is live from home, so I won't see you in person.
That's really sad.
But I still have your game. So make sure you guys tune in to SEC. Give Maddie some love on social media because she deserves it. She's her. And thanks for joining us. Hopefully this was insightful for you. If you guys have any questions, you need anything, you have new podcast topics you want us to talk about, please reach out. Follow us at the Keeper Institute on social media, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you.